Your neighbor's house is for sale. So you pull it up on Zillow and it says your neighbor's house is worth $285,000. But then it sells 3 weeks later for $247,000. Or maybe it's the other way around. You want to buy a home and you walk into a listing convinced that the Zestimate is gospel. And now you've got a problem before you even start. Real estate apps are everywhere. They're easy to use and they're generally useful, but they can also get you into trouble fast if you don't know what you're actually looking at. Today, we're breaking down the big apps, what they're good for, what they get wrong, and which ones are actually worth your time. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to the RE Real Estate Podcast, where we discuss buying and selling real estate in black and white. Here are your hosts, Ben Harang and Clint Galliano.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the RE Real Estate Podcast. My name is Ben Harang, and I'm here today, as usual, with my co-host, Clint Galliano. How you doing today, Clint?
I'm doing wonderful, Ben. How you doing?
I'm doing terrific. Glad to hear it. Springtime is coming, it looks like, and the season is here, so we're going to get right into it. Tell us what we're talking about today, Clint.
All right. So we figured that we've covered buying, we've covered selling, we've covered insurance, we've covered market updates. Today, we're going to talk about what options consumers have as far as apps go for buying or selling real estate. So this is for anybody that's ever pulled up Zillow, Realtor, or any other app to look at their home, check a value, or research a neighborhood, which is pretty much everybody. Now, the goal isn't to bash these tools. They genuinely help consumers get into the process, but it's more to give listeners a clear-eyed understanding of what the data means and where it breaks down. So South Louisiana context matters here, as pretty much everything we talk about is related to South Louisiana, and in particular, the Bayou Board market. But our market's got unique characteristics. There's a lot of rural areas, waterfront properties. There's definitely flood zone complexity, and national apps tend to have trouble characterizing that because they don't really have a clue. It's like it makes me think about it. Have you ever had a client come up to you and they've done their research on one of these apps and it does not reflect reality? How do you handle that?
Absolutely. They come in and we start visiting, and sometimes they'll puff out their chest and say, I did the research. I know what my house is worth, or I know what the house is worth that we're going to see, and it's not worth it, what they're asking. And I generally look at them and acknowledge, I understand where you're coming from, but who do you think would be a little more accurate than the other? A computer algorithm somewhere that you don't know where they are, can't talk to anybody, don't know how they come up with the price, or somebody that lives and breathes the local market every single day? Then there's usually a long, awkward silence. Their shoulders slump, and they say, well, you live it, so I guess I'm going to believe you above the algorithm. And then we set the stage, and then we can continue the conversation. But that's how I handle it. It just point out to them that they believe in a number that they want to believe. It could be high, it could be low, it could be right. But until we look at it, we don't know what it is. So what do you think about the apps, Clint?
I think they're useful as a discovery tool. I mean, a couple of years ago, SNL did a skit about late night Zillow porn scrolling and stuff, so it's kind of well known that people scroll through, it's almost like Tinder. When they're looking at properties, they don't really have an intent to buy. They're just looking at them. They're okay. They don't necessarily service me directly as an agent. Now, I will look at various apps for, some of them includes information compiled with the listing or the
Hmm.
property or what have you that is sometimes useful that it's easier just to go there because it's tied right there to the property. But generally, when I talk real estate apps, I prefer to share my own just because I've got a direct connection to it, and
Hmm.
the consumers using the apps have a direct connection to me through it.
Okay, I like it. So let's talk about the big three. And this changes over time, but we could throw a fourth one in there. But Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, and another one is Homes.com that's chasing Zillow. So there's really, I guess, four of them. Zillow's the most recognized real estate app. Everybody knows it. I have trouble getting my clients off of Zillow. And the problem is the info on Zillow is not always accurate or up to date. It should be up to date, but for whatever reason, it's not. It is where most buyers start. Zestimate is an algorithm generated estimate based on public records and user submitted data. So the public records info is probably correct. The user submitted data I'm going to say is probably wrong. If a user is measuring their house to submit the square footage, I guarantee you it's wrong. Not because they don't know what they're doing or how to measure or read a tape measure. They don't know how to measure it. It's not an appraisal, and markets in South Louisiana can be significantly off due to the limited amount of information that's available in our rural areas. So, like Clint said, you might get a nugget of information out of it, but don't believe much of it, whether you like the number or don't like the number.
Yeah, and generally the automated valuations that you may run across, I mean, even the one in my app, it's based on certain inputs that work across a large geographical area. But one little piece of information can be different for a listing and will make that automated valuation inaccurate. A clear example, when we were testing out the automated valuation function in my app, the I had a I sent it out to a bunch of my neighbors asking if they wanted to check it out and see what their home was worth. And one of them came back at about $100,000 less than
Hmm.
what everybody else's homes were valued at. And so I started digging into it, and what I realized is that there had been home a freeze put on the the valuations for the assessment valuations.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, 10, 15 years ago, which is about the time when houses were worth about that amount.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, and this is going to be across the board. Every automated valuation focuses on different pieces of information, but there can be stuff that doesn't keep current. So if there's a freeze on the assessment values
Hmm.
for the homes, then that's probably a big input into determining what the home is worth now. So that's why it pays to have somebody that's looking at the current market and takes those things into account. And Zestimate is no different. It's not based on even on a neighborhood, it's just based on geographical areas. But even close by, and we may touch on that in a little bit, can be wildly different.
Absolutely. Realtor.com pulls directly from the MLS, and it tends to be more accurate and up to date than data that Zillow has. It's often a better choice for checking active listings and days on the market, but it still can't differentiate in the microcosm of the individual markets within the Bayou Board of Realtors. And if you've heard any of our podcasts, we've broken down, I think we did a good job of breaking down the market in the different zip codes in our area. And some zip codes are buyers markets, some zip codes are sellers markets. And I'm not sure they account for those idiosyncrasies of the different zip codes.
Yeah, and another thing, realtor runs a lot of ads.
Hmm.
These are to I think that they're mainly lender ads, but that's, hey, it's like you're not paying for the app, you're getting it for free, so that makes you the product. They're trying to sell you on the lenders that advertise with them.
Hmm.
All right. Redfin is strong in markets where it operates actively, but its presence and data accuracy in South Louisiana is limited. It's probably better suited for metros more than our Bayou country. I haven't looked in the last, I don't know, 6 months to see if they have anything in our area, but I know historically they don't cover our board area.
I haven't seen anything from Redfin uh, recently at all. So really, the other three apps we're talking about are Zillow, Realtor.com, and Homes.com now. Since Redfin doesn't really play a part, their info
Right.
is delayed uh, 24 to 72 hours. So depending on when they update their information, a house that is showing active on their site may be under contract for a day or three, just depending on when they updated it. So you get your hopes up on going look at a house, and then you realize by the time you find it and make the appointment, it was gone before you even found it because Zillow had bad information or the apps had bad information. So just be cognizant of the fact that it's not gospel, and if you get a piece of information out of it, great. But don't rely on a Zestimate or any automated valuation system.
Yeah. And another thing is that none of these apps have full visibility into, I don't necessarily like the term pocket listings, but anything that isn't listed, so off market deals. They also don't have visibility into nuances of specific neighborhoods.
Mhm.
Those are things that local agents know intuitively.
All right, Clint, have you ever had a client almost make a bad decision based on a bad Zestimate value that you're working with?
I've had a few that tried, but ultimately I was able to convince them of, saying, hey, that doesn't mean anything and show them why. And the ones that wouldn't see reason, they moved on.
Next. Yeah.
So
Uh,
but
go
based on
ahead.
that, when a seller comes in saying, hey, Zillow says my house is worth X, I want to list it at that. How do you walk them back to reality without losing the listing?
Well, sometimes I lose the listing because I tell them something like, "Good luck with that," um, and and then I get into the point of, like I said earlier, the automated valuation versus somebody that lives and breathes the market every day. And I ask them who they think has better information and can make a better decision on the market value. And invariably, they say the local market expert. On occasion, they say, "Well, the computer can do it all," and those are the ones that I typically lose because if they don't understand the value that I bring to the table, it's just not going to end well for anybody. I'll refer somebody like that out to another agent.
Yeah. So just to give examples of how things vary in the market that I live in, or I should say the micro market I live in, because I live in Bayou Blue. I know of a house that Zillow says is worth $305,000,
Hmm.
which if the sellers could sell that, if the owners were selling that house and could sell it for that, that would make them really happy. But by all accounts, and I've run comparative market analysis and things, the maximum that house could sell for is $280,000. So that's a $25,000 difference in valuations. You got any
Right.
stories like that?
I have one that is significantly further apart than that. I was looking at a house the other day, and I was curious on what the Zestimate is on it. I know the house is worth north of $650,000 on the market where it is. So I pulled up the Zillow and looked at the Zestimate, and they said the house is worth $288,000, less than
Wow.
half of the true value. And that's not an embellishment at all. That house could well sell for $700,000. It might have something to do with a tax freeze on it, like Clint said earlier. There could be any number of reasons, but the problem is you don't know where the number comes from. At least when we do a market analysis, we'll show you where excuse me, where the numbers come from. And you can challenge what we use as a comp and say, what about Johnny's house down the street? They had it listed for $300,000, and you're telling me mine's worth 250, and you don't have Johnny's house on a comp as a comp. Well, it might be because Johnny's house was listed at 300. It sold for 2.25 because it was about to get foreclosed on. And if we use Johnny's house, it might pull your value down. But we can at least talk about those things. With the Zestimate, you have no idea what they use for a comp, where the numbers come from. It's just like they pluck it out of thin air.
That's why I say you have to be aware.
Mhm.
All right. So I want to move on now to some hidden gems. These are things that consumers either don't know about or don't think about or can't seem to find. So the first one is FEMA Flood Map Service Center. And you can find that at msc.fema.gov. One of the most important tools available to South Louisiana buyers, and almost nobody uses it. You can look up any address and see its official flood zone designation based on whatever current flood risk map is in place for wherever the address is. So you pair this with an understanding of risk rating 2.0, and you have a much clearer picture of the insurance costs before you make an offer. But I always recommend, and this is my process, is before we make an offer, we get insurance quotes. So we
Right.
have a hard understanding of what those insurance costs are going to be.
But at least you can figure out the flood zone if it's not on the disclosure for the house you may be interested in seeing. And if you decide
Exactly.
you're not going to buy a house in a special flood hazard risk flood zone, then you don't need to go see that house. So another app is to determine a USDA, or what we typically call rural development eligibility, which is rural. I can't say that word. It determines whether the property is eligible for 100% financing with no down payment, which is a big deal in our rural market. So the eligibility map is at eligibility.sc.egov.usda.gov. You can probably search it, but if you enter the address of the property, it'll tell you instantly whether or not it's eligible for a USDA loan at 100% financing. So it's just good information to have if you're in the market for a 100% loan product.
And a little secret, the majority of our area is considered USDA rural development eligible, but it's always a good idea to verify it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Next, we're going to talk about my personal favorite, and that's the Keller Williams consumer app. So, consumer facing mobile app pulls listing data directly from the MLS, means that it's more current and accurate than you'll find on Zillow or Realtor.
Mm-hmm.
It also includes a home valuation section that if you create an account and fill out the information, it'll tell you saying, hey, this is what your home is likely worth. And it does it a little bit differently in that it gives you a range, an upper and lower range. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
giving you a specific number, but it gives you an idea. And again, like all the other automated valuations, take it with a grain of salt and confirm with an agent. Let's see. So with that, it gives you the power to do that in your home. All right. A few ways to get it is you can download my personal app or Ben's personal app. And these are Keller Williams consumer apps that if you follow the link in the show notes for either one, will connect you directly with either one of us. Now, if you don't want to commit to anybody and just want to kick the tires, you can go to whatever app store, the Apple App Store, or the Google Play Store, and search for KW Real Estate and download it independently without being connected directly with an agent. If you go
Hmm.
that route, you can search for an agent to connect with. And then at that point, you'll be connected with that agent going forward.
Okay. So, how about Google Maps? People use Google Maps to navigate and drive around, but using Street View just to get a feel for the neighborhood. You can you can look at the condition of the houses. You can look at the condition of the house you're thinking about looking at. You can literally walk down the street and look at the houses on both sides of the house you're thinking about. You look at the houses across the street. You look at how the yards are maintained. You get an idea for the character of the subdivision. And you already probably have Google Maps online on your computer, on your phone. So you can tell an awful lot about a real estate listing or a property that you're interested in by just walking down the street online and paying attention to the condition of everything.
All right. Another one is mortgage calculators. Now there's some websites like bankrate.com and NerdWallet that they're trying to sell you something that will have mortgage calculators that you can use, and then they'll show you national lenders rates and terms that those lenders are advertising on those websites, and so they'll push those to you. They're useful for ballpark payment estimates. Ultimately, if you want to, you're looking at a specific house and you want to know what it looks like, you can go to Ben or I's websites, find the property, and at the bottom of the page, there's a mortgage calculator. By default, it shows the simple version. And if you want to get more detailed, you click on the button and it allows you to put in your annual taxes, uh, your PMI amount, insurance costs, and it'll give you a slightly more accurate picture of what your note might be based on those particular numbers.
Mm. So, which of these tools do you find yourself recommending most often to clients, and how does the KW app stack up against Zillow in your experience?
So, while most people, like you said, most clients are either using Zillow or more comfortable with Zillow, I always promote my app because there's no confusion on if you're asking a question on who's going to be responding. On
Hmm.
Zillow, if you click the contact an agent button, it's set up to look like you're reaching out to the listing agent when in actuality, as a consumer, you're being contacted to a buyer agent that is paying to get leads through Zillow. If you're using my app, the KW app, all that communication comes directly to me, or in Ben's case, directly to Ben. And it allows you to request showings and ask questions and communicate back and forth. You can also save your favorites, make different collections, all those fun things. So that's why I prefer the KW consumer app.
Yeah.
So what do you have a website or an app that you wish existed but doesn't yet? Something that solves a problem for buyers in our area?
I don't know if it's an app or a website, but one of my pet peeves is we look at a property online, buyers want to go see it. We set up the appointment, we schedule everything. They take a day off of work, take a day from their weekend off of work, and we go see the house. And I unlock the door, we walk in, and the first thing that they say is, "This house is not nearly as big as it looks in the pictures." My pet peeve is a photographer, and I love them all, taking the pictures they take and want to make it look nice. My contention is I want it to look real. I want the buyer to walk into that house and see exactly what they thought they were going to see from the pictures. If we oversell it, they walk in and they're disappointed. If we undersell the house with the pictures, they may never walk in to see the real house. So people are believing what they see online. And if it's not a fair representation, they don't have a chance of seeing that house. And it adversely selects against that property if the pictures don't match the condition of the house. You know, I showed one last week and we walked in and we were laughing because we couldn't figure out how the bed was in front of the door in the bedroom. Well, it's easy for AI to put it in there. It was an AI staging and the door was open. They just put the bed in front of the door and agent didn't move it or redo it. They just left it there. So it worked against the house when we saw it. It was like, okay, now it makes a whole lot more sense, but we almost didn't come see the house because of that. Like, why does it need to be in front of the door? It must be an underlying issue or something. Doesn't make any sense. So I would just like a fair representation for the photos that are online to represent the actual property.
Okay. Nice.
What are some of the things that apps get wrong in South Louisiana? Well, like we talked about, the automated valuations, the accuracy is not real high because of the thin markets. If we'd have hundreds of sales in one area, we would have a much better feel for the value that the automated valuations do. But you can look at them, the Zestimates on realtor.com, homes.com, they'll give you a confidence level 1 to 5 of how confident they are in the value they create in their automated valuation model. Most of them are 1 and 2s, unless it's a cookie cutter house in a neighborhood that has resold. And then it might be a little more accurate. But without personal knowledge of the market in the area, you don't know if it's a valid number or not.
All right. Another thing is flood zone and insurance data. You're not going to find that on any of the real estate apps. It would be nice if you'd have like a flood zone overlay in the map view,
Mm-hmm.
estimated insurance costs. Now, I could see that being a bigger problem to implement just because of the large variations between insurance carriers and what's available. But I could also see that turn into a bonanza for those sites because they would be selling advertising to the insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
A house that looks affordable on Zillow, and not just on Zillow, but anywhere, if flood insurance is required and depending on what the cost of homeowners insurance is, and we've talked about this on quite a few episodes on how insurance costs wind up blowing it out of the water for most buyers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't find out until they're already emotionally attached. Again, that's why when I'm working with buyers, we get insurance estimates just to see if it's even worth trying to make an offer on the house.
Right. Right. Um, okay. So how about off market or make me move listings on Zillow? Zillow has a habit. I'm not gonna tell you what kind of habit I think it is, but they have a habit of blurring the lines on whether or not a property is for sale. If you're looking for a certain house, you'll look it up, and it tends to lead you to believe the house is actively on the market to be sold. And you scroll down a couple of pages, and it'll say off market, not for sale. But if you look at the initial listing on it, I'm gonna call it a listing with quotes, I guess, because it's not a listing. But if you look at the initial data set on that listing, on that house, it makes you believe it's listed for sale. And then you try to contact an agent, you'll contact somebody other than the listing agent because there's no listing agent. And you're going to be talking to somebody you have no idea who they are, where they're from, why y'all are talking. So the just be careful of the off market and make me move type listings. And by make me move, meaning make me an offer that I cannot refuse, and I'll move. If it's not absurdly high, I'm not moving. That
Yeah, I
house
was
is
gonna
not
say,
really on the market.
that sounds like it's geared to, drive housing prices up.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right, here's another one, school ratings and neighborhood data. So, the apps use third-party rating services that may be outdated or use metrics that don't reflect the local reality. I can give you an example of, and this, we've had a few schools areas in our schools in Terrebonne Parish that the the local school board has decided to close and consolidate into a less risky location, and just bust the students in. The the service that provided the data had accurate data in their data set, but the on the particular app, they had not implemented the latest version of that data set. And so it was displaying, if you in this neighborhood, your kids will go to this school and that school, and those schools were closed, with the anticipation that they're going to be moving into a new school once it's finished being built. So there's always the risk of that if they're not keeping up with the latest data sets on that. Uh, it's always better to verify directly with the school board.
Yes. We already talked about listing photos versus reality. It's a pet peeve I have. Again, I want the photos to fairly represent the house. It could show you some things about the neighborhood you don't like, or how close to a drainage canal the house really is. That they forgot to put that picture in there. I'm sure it was an honest mistake. They just didn't upload that one picture that showed the house is about to fall in a drainage canal. So it's the surprise between the photos and reality that does that sets it up for failure.
All right. So I'm going to move on to the right way to use these tools. So think of those consumer apps as a starting point, not a finishing point. Again, whether it's the pictures, whether it's the automated valuation, they're they're a point to get started. They're not going to be what makes you consider to buy the house. So it gives you an idea. You get a feel for the market and identify properties you'd like to see. They're not a substitute for a comparative market analysis, a professional appraisal, or local agent knowledge.
All right. So if you're going to use realtor.com and Zillow, use realtor.com for more accurate listing information and Zillow for the depth and saved search alerts. But I wouldn't believe the content of either one of them. I just use it as pieces of information. Um, and then the FEMA and the USDA tools and Google Maps, use those to help you do some due diligence during the process, whether it's before you make the offer or after make the offer. Hopefully it's before you make the offer. And if you have the flood zone determination made by FEMA and it says you're not in a special flood hazard zone or the house is not, then might be a house you want to go look at. If it says it is in a special flood hazard zone and they do not have flood insurance on it, then you're going to get hit with a pretty stiff penalty or premium on that house for the flood insurance. So you can use those two pieces, those four apps to get a much better understanding of the house.
And if you're a seller, getting a comparative market analysis from a local agent before you even look at your Zestimate, pricing your home on an AVM or automated valuation model is one of the most common and costly mistakes sellers make. If you price it too high, then we've talked about how having your home priced too high makes it harder to sell, and you're likely to bypass the market value in trying to bring buyers in, because at that point, the only tool you have is to drop your price to
Hmm.
entice buyers to come in and think about making an offer. And you may pass up what the actual market value is compared to if you price it right before you put it on the market.
Well, and history shows, just a comment on that. History shows that if you put your house on the market at the right price and it sells without a price reduction, your net proceeds will be higher than if you list the house at a higher price, nothing happened, and then you have to lower the price to find the market. The market then wonders what's wrong with the house. If they thought it was worth X and now they're listing it for Y, something must be wrong with it. So you're better off pricing it right on the front end and go ahead and sell your house. If you're a buyer, use the apps to identify the property maybe, but ask your agent to pull the actual MLS listing data before you go see the house and review it to confirm or deny whether it's the right house for you to look at. And the most accurate information we have on that property is in the local multiple listing service. It has far more complete information than any of the other apps because all of the information from the other apps basically come from that MLS, but for some reason they don't take it all. So there's always more information in the MLS than there is on most of the consumer apps.
So, Ben, if you could tell every first time buyer or seller just one thing about how to use these apps responsibly, what would it be?
Use them for what they are. Don't over rely on the information on them. Because if you do a Zestimate on Zillow, you do an automated valuation on Realtor.com, you do one on Redfin, you do one on Homes.com, I can pretty much guarantee you there will be a wide variation in those automated values. As a first time buyer or seller, you need to find the right agent that you click with, whether it's Clint, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, and stick with them. If there's a reason you clicked with them, you believe them, you think they're good, listen to them. Don't listen to the noise that's online because that's what it is. And every now and then they may be right, but without confirming it, you don't know if they're right or not. You know, like the old saying is, even a broken clock is the right time of the day, twice a day. So you can't help but be right sometimes, but most of the time, the local expert in the market, the people that live and breathe the market, have a much better handle on evaluations than an automated valuation app that's based in God only knows where.
All right. Guess what time it is, Ben?
All right. Sounds like it's homework time, which I always loved when I was in school.
Homework. What's that?
It's work you do before you leave school.
That's right. If you do it at all.
I was about to say, if you don't do it before you leave school, it doesn't get done.
That's right. All right. So your homework for this week is to run your home address through 4 tools. If you own the home, pull up your address on Zillow and note what the Zestimate is. Then download the consumer app, either my version, Ben's version, or if you don't feel like committing to either one of us, search for KW Real Estate in the App Store and make sure you download the app with the white icon. That's if you just want to check it out and not
Hmm.
necessarily commit to anything. Run the same address through the home valuation tool in the app. Compare the two numbers and see where they land. Next, go to FEMA Flood Map Service or the FEMA Flood Map Service Center at msc.fema.gov and look up your local flood zone designation. You'd be surprised at how many sellers I've run across that have no clue what their flood zone is.
Hmm.
And finally, if you've been thinking about selling, reach out to a local agent and ask for a no obligation CMA. Then compare what the agent says to what the apps say. The difference will tell you everything you need to know about how much to trust an algorithm with the biggest financial asset you own.
All right. Sound like we talked enough about the consumer apps, Zillow, Realtor.com, and the rest of them. They're useful. just for nuggets of information. Use them at the beginning, maybe. Rather, if you use a KW app, I think it has the most accurate information. But lean on a local expert to actually help you buy or sell a house. Don't proceed based on those estimates. You've heard stories about Zestimates being wildly high and wildly low, and you certainly don't want to sell it wildly low. You don't want to undersell the house, but if you overprice the house, it'll sit on the market, and you will get frustrated over the lack of activity because the market knows how much your house is worth. And when the market's telling you by no activity, it's speaking loud and clear. It's screaming at you that it's overpriced. But unless you listen to it, you're not hearing it. So do us a favor. If you like what you see, hit the like and subscribe button. Tell your mom and them about it. Listen to it on wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, iHeart, Apple, whoever it is. We're two guys with faces for radio. We actually have it on YouTube too, on the RE Real Estate Podcast channel. All of this is available on the realestatepodcast.com website. You can listen to the podcast directly there. There's links to the latest versions, all the versions on YouTube, with the latest versions first. So however you consume your information, we think we make it available to you in that format. So take a look at it. If you have any questions, there's a link on realestatepodcast.com. You can email us. We'll answer them online. We may do an episode based on your question, and we'll see where it goes. But other than that, I appreciate you joining us.
All right. Looks like we got another one in the can. Thanks, Ben.
All right, Clint. Enjoyed it, man. Have a good one.
You too.
While we may discuss topics such as lending, interest rates, title law, real estate law, and appraisals in addition to real estate sales and transactions, please remember that we are only trained and licensed as real estate salespeople in Louisiana. The information shared on this podcast is for general purposes only and should not be taken as legal or financial advice. We may be agents, but unless we have signed paperwork stating otherwise, we are not your agents.